This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Loose on the Lead. I'm Seth Merrill from Equidaily.com, live in the studio, live via phone. It's Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Seth. How was your Thanksgiving?
Very good, very good. I finished up the leftovers yesterday, although I still have some apple pie left. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was great. Of course, it would have been better if you would come over to the house.
The weather was a little hinky, and I panicked the night before and bought the stuff to fix my own. But then we'll schedule for next year.
All right.
But after the holiday up at your house, you headed down to New York. You were down yesterday for the big day of racing, Cigar Mile, highlighting a very, very big card, which kind of completed a great holiday weekend, which kicked off on Thanksgiving with the Fall Highway, moved on to the Go for Wand. We'll look at some of these races as we talk, but I just want a little feel for what was the place like yesterday.
Well, it was a typical Cigar Mile. Certainly the cold temperatures, I think, kept people away a little bit. It was cold, and which was a little too bad because when it's in the 50s and you get sun, it can be nice for Cigar Mile. But when people woke up, it had to be in the high 30s, low 40s. It was a little nippy out there, but still very pleasant day. The biggest problem, of course, was the way the racetrack was playing, which was such a strange scenario, and that was the biggest complaint and the biggest issue when you look at these results. The strange part about it was that everybody that was training at Aqueduct said the track was dull inside in the morning. And so whether it's the temperatures and the wind, inadvertently, trying to even the track out to make the inside good, it's been very difficult to discern from day to day almost if the inside is going to be a complete bog or if it's going to be a bit of a gold rail, which is what you had yesterday. And so it skewed the results a little bit and seems to be taking away from people's appreciation for the winners. Some of that is fair, some of it isn't. I think it's probably unfair when you talk about Private Zone, who ran a tremendous race. It is probably fair when you talk about what happened in the Remsen, where clearly if you leave the light on and leave the light on in the two path, the way Frosted had to be. Frosted was wide the whole trip. If Frosted is somehow on the rail, he wins that race easily. He ran the winning race and the courageous race, losing ground every step of the way, while Chad Brown, to his credit, and clearly to the credit of Jose Ortiz, they knew to get on the engine and put themselves down inside and see how far the racetrack would take them. And it parlays into a Grade 2 Remsen win.
Yeah, and we'll look at that in a few minutes, and we'll also look at the Demoiselle, which was a front-end score for Condo Commando, as you say, Private Zone as well on the front end in the Cigar Mile. Let's take a look, though. Let's go back to Friday. Wanted to pull up the Go for Wand from Friday, which was right in the middle of that holiday weekend. This was a Grade 3 event for fillies and mares, going a mile on the dirt, $300,000. Wanted to show this one because it was a nice effort. We'll watch the number 10, Classic Point, get it done. Continuing a very good year for Jimmy Jerkins. Classic Point, who for much of the career had been in the barn of his dad, Alan Jerkins. Jimmy's taken this one over, won a nice restricted stake last time out, and then follows it up on Friday with the Go for Wand. And we'll see the favorite, the 2-to-1 favorite, the number 6 horse, Princess Violet, makes a big late run. And I tell you, watching the race live and watching the replay a number of times, I thought Princess Violet had it, but no, the photo showed it was Jimmy Jerkins and Classic Point.
Yeah, I thought Classic Point held on late there, and it's funny, Friday's racetrack was very even, and horses, if they were good enough up front, they won. If horses tried to rally the way Princess Violet did, and people may not have noticed, but another couple of lengths back, there was Jimmy Toner with Moment and Dixie ran a nice race, and Sweet Whiskey held on pretty well to get the last decent check. But Classic Point and Princess Violet put on a terrific stretch duel here. And what could you say? This was a really fun race, and nice that Grade 3 gets a big field like this. 11 horses, it was a surprisingly good field, and you end up with a more than adequate set of performances. And you mentioned Jimmy Jerkins this year. It just so happens I was looking up the numbers. He has now set a personal best in terms of earnings in a single season, jumping over the $4 million mark in cumulative purse monies earned. So it's basically Jimmy Jerkins' best year of his career, and everybody happy for Jim.
Yeah, nice 1-2 in the $1 million Travers certainly has to help the bottom line there. Let's shift our attention now to yesterday. Again, a really great stakes card to kind of wrap up the Grade 1 season down at Aqueduct with the Grade 1 cigar at the end of the day. We kicked things off, though, early in the day with a Grade 3 event, the Comley, $400,000 for 3-year-old fillies going 1 1/8 miles. And a timely scratch from the Gopher Wand the day before. Snowbell scratched out of that one to race on Saturday, and it will be the 1A Snowbell getting it done as part of the 9-5 favored entry. Running second at 29-1, Chez Jolie for Gary Contessa. Running third, the number 3 Dame Dorothy. But as I say, a nice scratch, a nice decision by the Connections to wait a day with Snowbell.
Yeah, it was. It was a good decision, and I didn't really. Funny, I didn't have a great feel for this race. I really, I was sort of mystified by this group, and I think if anything, we see that turned back the alarm that was won by Dame Dorothy. Really, you might come into question a little bit that group, but you have to figure that. Any number of the Darley players were going to be, important in here, and it ends up being Snowbell that breaks through right away in her first attempt at Graded Stake Black Type.
All right, let's move on to the 2-year-old races. The Demoiselle and the Remsen typically provide some horses to keep your attention towards as they become 3-year-olds. We'll see how that shakes out, given the bias of the track yesterday. But the Demoiselle for $400,000, 1 1/8 miles for the 2-year-old fillies. And Condo Commando, given the way the track was playing and the scratch of Jacaranda, boy, she became very, very intriguing, certainly, as the 3-2 choice. Calamity Kate will run second at 12-1. And second choice, Angela Renee, will run third. So it'll be 6-2-7 under the wire. The disappointment for me, I thought Kazan was going to be very interesting in this race. But again, given the way the track was playing, 4th place finish, I guess, was the situation. There was a little trouble with a few of these horses at the start, but Condo Commando on the front end, much as we saw up at Saratoga in the Spinaway.
Well, there's no real mystery to this race, the way things turn out. And, you said the key element, which was Jacaranda, Mike Hushin and Barry Schwartz deciding to come out of the race, and I didn't hear the specifics of what drew her out. But once that happened, this race was over. I mean, there was no, especially the way the track ended up playing. But Condo Commando, when I said at the top that when you have a racetrack like this, everybody will quickly discount everybody's performances, but that's not fair, because even if the track had been, completely even, I don't necessarily think that Condo Commando was getting beat under that particular, set of circumstances. Calamity Kate ran very well, and further enhances, I think, some of the horses that came out of that, out of the Alcibiades, because of course Top the Style ran very well in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies with a bad ride, but you got to be impressed with the job Rudy Rodriguez has done. Michael Dubb and Mike Caruso and the Elkstone people, they've really exceeded expectations. And it's funny because when a horse starts out for a maiden claiming tag, right away there's this impression. Everybody keeps discounting Condo Commando to some extent, just because she debuted for Maiden 75. Well, I mean, Maiden 75 is like a half a tick below Maiden Special Weight. It's not like, Maiden 75 at Saratoga it's just a hair away. So people seem to think that she's somehow, this gigantic surprise. I mean, she's by one of the top win early sires in the game right now, and is wonderful. And we'll see how she translates and turns the corner into her 3-year-old season. I mean, she seems a little one-dimensional, Seth, in terms of the fact that she didn't get the lead in the Frizette, and she didn't sulk, but she also didn't ever really engage. So we'll see. We'll see with maturity. This really is something when you think about a horse that broke her maiden at 5.5 and wins the spin away at 7, and now wins at 1 mile and an 1/8, even with the way the track was playing. She goes into the 3-year-old this season. I think that she'll probably get some votes for the Eclipse. I mean, I know everybody's concentrating on Lady Eli and on Take Charge Brandy, but why isn't Condo Commando third in the voting for the 2-year-old filly Eclipse?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I want to see another one from Kazan. I think this horse is better than that fourth-place finish.
It's all right. And listen, anytime you have Bobby Robato with a win early horse. I mean, come on. This is obviously a horse that as she gets older, you got to figure is only going to get better. So saw Bobby, of course, yesterday there, and Mark Keller, and they're so easy to root for. Bobby Robato, one of the most popular people on the circuit, and we certainly expect that we've got a pretty nice group of 2-year-old fillies on the East Coast. So that bodes well for early next winter.
All right, let's move on to the Remsen, which was certainly a fun addition in that 13 horses lined up. That's always nice when you get a big full field. The number 2, Leave the Light On, will get it done. As we noted, on the front end, it's 6-1 for Chad Brown and Klarovich. They had a nice day. They won a stake down at Gulfstream Park as well. The favorite was number 12, Frosted, at 9-5. Was strung outside, obviously, with that number 12, was a number 13 post position. But got good position early, and number 8, Keen Ice, will run third in here at 22-1. Leave the Light On. Again, got to see another one from this race, though. Did the bias help? Because, boy, you look at this horse, really badly beaten in the career debut, then won in the second start, but it was an off-the-turf event. I want to see another one from this one on a nice dry, fair track. And again, as you noted earlier, Frosted made a very good run to make this competitive at the end here.
No, Frosted's the horse that comes away with the reputation in hand, as opposed to being beaten as the favorite. You don't watch this race. You don't look at the track data to see how much ground he lost versus the winner on the rail. You come away with a real appreciation for what Frosted has in store as he moves toward the 3-year-old season. Now, this was the effort that absolutely resonates. Classy Class became, it's funny, Classy Class, I was a little bit more against him than Frosted, but that was the story of the entire field, was that you had those favorites, including Australenka, who stunk. They were all outposted wide, and so if you were going to look for some prices, you certainly, I thought, had reason to believe you could find somebody. I was playing around with Royal Bird, the Starlight second-time starter. He was awful. Acampari, the Michael Dilger, but you had to figure the way the track played, it was going to be against him a little bit, but I played with him. And then I tried the 115-1 shot, Bodhisattva, who ran very well, and ended up, I needed him, all I needed him to be was third, and he could only manage fifth. He was beaten 3 lengths or so, but I was trying to get him to clunk up for third, behind a bunch of horses. Keen Ice ran a terrific race. That's the Donegal runner for Dale Roman. Keep Keen Ice on your radar, because that was a very strong effort from a difficult circumstance, trying to rally. And yes, he got beat 8-9 lengths, but don't completely shrug off, a horse like that was trying to make up ground against the bias. But Frost is the horse that comes away, and you've got the right attitude when you say, let's leave the light on, move forward, and be successful on a more even track. But don't discount it completely. It was racehorse time, got a 90-something buyer. Solid effort.
And you alluded to it, the disappointment was Ostrolenko, a horse that I liked in the race, but just was never in it and winds up last in the field of 13. I mean, that was a real disappointment.
Yeah, I actually stayed away from him. What was funny about that horse, when you hear Todd Fletcher, when Fletcher says, he was shocked and surprised by the way the horse broke his maiden and that kind of thing, that to me sort of said, there's something is questionable, and who knows what was behind him in those in those New York bred maiden wins and the Sleepy Hollow. So I kind of shied away from what looked like a difficult spot, and I'm kind of glad I did. There were some other horses in here that disappointed to some extent. When you also should take into account the bad start. 37 Lives On is a horse that's got high expectations for Zayat and for Dale Roman. He absolutely botched the break, and is now 0 for 4, and will have to try to break his maiden somewhere. That's the Mind That Bird brother. Who else in here? Combat Diver disappointed me. He didn't. He had the opportunity. I thought that Jeremy Rose needed to, get him in the race early from a good post, and he didn't do it. I mean, I don't know what he was. I don't know. I got to watch the replay again and see what happened to Combat Diver off the break, because I know that Chip McEwen from Wounded Warrior wanted to get Combat Diver, into the race early, the way he was at Belmont when he broke his maiden. So that was a disappointment. He ends up, I think, 9th or 10th. So, that's the trouble, Seth, with these races on a racetrack like this, because you really don't learn much about the horses, and you always want to learn about 2-year-olds at this time. Maybe we had more to glean from the horses that ran at Churchill yesterday instead of these 2 races.
Let's take a look out at the final stake on Aqueduct's card, though, which again was aided by the track bias. It was the Cigar Mile, which again wraps up the Grade 1 season in New York. As the name indicates, they're going a mile, $500,000, and this race kind of continues to validate that Breeders' Cup Sprint. Private Zone, Secret Circle, Bourbon Courage running 1, 2, 3, and Private Zone will be the number 1. Secret Circle will be the number 6. Bourbon Courage the number 9. Again, they run 1, 2, 3. Coming out of that Breeders' Cup Sprint, earlier we saw Saludos Amigos, who ran 7th in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, win the Fall Highway earlier this week, and Big Mocker, who ran 9th, won the Cary Grant out at Del Mar. But here we're seeing the stretch run. Private Zone, again, on the front end, gets it done at 9-2. Secret Circle, a little bit of trouble at the start, runs second at 5-2. I think the big disappointment in here, It's My Lucky Day in the career finale, runs last in the field of 9.
Yeah, he had no excuse either, and you have to figure that, with everybody understanding the way the racetrack was to that point, and Martin Pedrosa, clearly, and Alfred Velasquez, they all knew what the assignment was going to be for Private Zone anyway. They take full advantage, and Pedrosa quarter horse the Private Zone out of there. And when they were coming to the turn, it was obvious that he was not going to be caught. At that point, everybody else was asking their horses, and Private Zone is cruising along. And it wasn't until they had straightened up that Pedrosa even started to ask, and Private Zone edges clear and runs off and wins by half a dozen. Secret Circle did bobble at the break, and he's been doing this a lot lately. But in the meantime, all he keeps doing is performing admirably in big spots. Back-to-back performances in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, second, of course, to Work All Week, and now second here in the Cigar Mile, part of a very good weekend around the country for Bob Baffert. Of course, it's not over yet. You got the racing today at Del Mar to close their season, but Baffert had a important performance out by Dortmund at Churchill, even though his stake runner, Lord Nelson, wasn't great in the Kentucky Jockey Club. But Secret Circle, like so many horses shipping east for Baffert this year, runs very well. Urban Courage does what he does, which is, come rallying late. I tried Big Business at a fat 30-1, and I needed him to be second, third, fourth. I played him, underneath in the circumstance, and he ended up a decent fourth. You hit it on the head when you say that It's My Lucky Day. Just absolutely dull. And the weird thing is, after the lousy Kelso performance, he seemingly had gone back to Calder and was training well. And it looked like he was coming back, and I thought that if Spendthrift, he's going to go stand stud next year, you would think that Spendthrift, if they didn't like the way he was training, they would have just said, okay, he's retired. The fact that he went ahead and came here, I didn't think they'd want to send him off to the Stallion career on a now back-to-back bad note. The two performances in the Kelso and the Cigar Mile, I'm not going to say they take away from his appeal as a sire, but he's a modest sire prospect as it is. Lawyer Ron, and nice line with Langstier, and of course Lawyer Ron's Stallion career interrupted prematurely and with his passing. So I don't know. I thought this was a pretty terrible way to end a career for It's My Lucky Day.
Yeah, it has to be absolutely disappointing for the Connections, but that did wind up the day yesterday. I also saw you put out a tweet, nice 110 buyer figure for a Private Zone winning this one. Also notable, again, this was the Get Out race yesterday, and they wound up the pick six. There's a $39,000 carryover coming into today, and as we go to the break, I just want to remind people, Gulfstream Park West wraps up their season, so they have mandatory payout in their Rainbow Six, and they're guaranteeing $500,000 down there in the Rainbow Six this afternoon. So there's some action to be had on Sunday. All right, Steve, we'll head to the first break. When we come back, we'll take a look at some more of the racing action from the holiday weekend. Stay tuned.
Historical Lady Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome Again, sire of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires, standing at Adena Springs.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what could be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not 1, but 2. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Welcome back to Loose on the Lead. Seth Merrow in the studio, Steve Bick via phone. He was down at Aqueduct for Cigar Mile Day yesterday. And Steve, we covered the New York races, but I think one of the most intriguing races of the weekend was yesterday out in Southern California. Biggest crowd of the Del Mar meet. They're reporting over 21,000 people. You certainly, watching the simulcast signal, heard the reaction. California Chrome, a fan favorite. We're going to watch the stretch run of the Hollywood Derby. I said last week, I'm surprised a grade 1 for big money, limited to the age range. They got as short a field as they did, but I thought given that, California Chrome, whether you like the turf or not, I thought he might outclass this bunch. And I'm not quite sure what to make of it, because I think that's what happened. He took command on the turn. I thought he was going to run away and hide from these. But Lexi Lou made a little run at the end, was well beaten, but got up within a couple of lengths. California Chrome, the number 5 horse, was the 3-5 favorite. Lexi Lou, the Queen's Plate winner, second choice at 5-2. She'll run second. And as I say, Steve, I don't quite know what to make of this, because, again, I'm not sure this was the strongest edition of this race. And at the top of the stretch, you think he's going to run away, and he doesn't quite do that. But, boy, the 1:47 and change was a solid time. So I think, and he may have been geared down at the end, because he certainly wasn't going to get caught. But what were your thoughts on the Hollywood Derby?
Well, the quality and the depth of the field aside, that's no reflection on the horse. They were doing something that gave them an opportunity to learn something about California Chrome. It confirmed what Art Sherman had said, all along, that he thought that the horse had potential to run on the grass, and why not? The horse was doing well. And instead of packing it in and waiting for next year, why not just go and, as you say, age restriction, learn something about your horse, and basically he does what was expected of him. I think they deserve plenty of credit. Art Sherman, seeing that the horse was doing well after the Breeders' Cup Classic, they had not intended really to do more. A lot of people speculating, this is a campaign for horses here, and it's a campaign to try to overturn Bayern and so on, and certainly Art Sherman is going to rightfully support his horse in that discussion, but that's not what this all was. It was an opportunity to win money, stay close to home, and get one more start in and learn something for the future. So I don't understand the urgency that people seem to have to be criticizing them and deriding the performance, or saying, this was a terrible field. How's that an indictment of what they did with the horse and the horse's performance? You can only enter a race and run against who shows up. You had a matchup between a Queen's Plate winner and a Derby winner. That in itself is fun and different, not to mention the fact that the Queen's Plate winner is a filly. I think there was a lot to like about it. It also put a terrific exclamation point on the season at Del Mar. They finish up today with the Matriarch and with the Cecil B. DeMille for the 2-year-olds. It's been a spectacularly successful fall introduction at Del Mar, and that's the best part of what's gone on here. As you mentioned, the big raucous crowd, appreciative and whipped into a frenzy for California Chrome when he crossed the wire, and then when he came back. There's just all positives to come out of this, I thought, and we'll wait and see for next year, and we'll wait and see how the voters determine, what this did in terms of contributing to the discussion of Horse of the Year and 3-year-old of the Year. I mean, on pure resumes, California Chrome did a lot of impressive things this year. And you take in his run-up to the Triple Crown season, and that's impressive enough. And then a dual classic win, a respectable Triple Crown try, and then beaten a head and a neck in the Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, what exactly is lacking? And then he follows it up with a win in the Hollywood Derby. So he's got a terrific resume. The problem is going to be that Bayern did some things that are also unique. he's got some circumstances that people are going to hold against him. So it's a very, very unique set of discussion points going forward.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see what the various pundits have to say this week. Some of them last week were saying they were watching this race with great interest vis-a-vis their eclipse ballot, so it'll be interesting to see how this horse comes out of it. And let me be clear, I'm not critical of the connections at all. I'm like you. I applaud them for having a race after the Breeders' Cup. Not only that, trying a change in surface. My only question mark, and that's just it, I just have some question marks coming out of it. I'm not quite sure if this proved a real potency on the turf or not, given the complexion of the field. He looked good. I'm just not sure. We'll see what happens next year and what the kind of spots they pick. As they said post-race, kind of the world is their oyster now. Dubai World Cup, Royal Ascot. I have a feeling none of that will happen, particularly with $1 million. Particularly with $1 million up for grabs at Santa Anita in the big cap. I think they'll probably stay home. But again, I'm with you. I applaud them. And you're exactly right. You can, as I say, you could hear it on the simulcast signal. The ovation he got pre-race, during the race, after the race, and then they reported the crowd at 21,000. As you said, it put a nice exclamation point on what now will, with this nice juiced up number from Saturday, will be some really big numbers for that fall meet. All right, let's shift our attention before we let you go and take a look at some of the other action and talk about a few of the other races. I have Jenny Reese coming up from the Louisville Courier-Journal in a few minutes, and we're going to talk specifically about some of this Churchill action, but I want to get some of your opinions as well. Going back to Friday, the Grade 1 Clark, it's going to be Opportunity winning, Protonico second, Constitution third, and I mention that because it's 3-year-olds running 1, 2, 3, keeping up with what we've seen all fall long. As the older division fell apart coming into the summer, the 3-year-olds have come together. And this wasn't necessarily the strongest addition to the Clark, but I have a feeling as we get into next year, it may look a little bit stronger.
Well, again, you can't necessarily hold, these fields against the horses. They can only point for spots and show up. And show up Opportunity did. And, Baffert's numbers are very funny. Going into this race, I don't know if those of you that heard the replay yesterday morning from Friday's preview show, Marty McGee, and then later, Marty did it first, and then Ronnie Goldfeder later on, both from the Racing Form, they quoted some BRF formulators stats. And Baffert's numbers, under the circumstances that Opportunity was running, 3-year-olds in graded stakes, off these layoffs, second off these layoffs, that kind of thing, was like 38% in graded stakes. And those numbers don't lie. And I know that right now, everybody loves to dump all over Baffert. He's become something of a favorite target. But in the meantime, all he does is keep bringing his horses back. A very other noted national trainer who all of his 3-year-olds seem to have disappeared. In the meantime, here's Baffert bringing out Chiku. Midnight Hawk is back today at Del Mar, who had Sider come out and fulfill his potential. Here's Opportunity, who couldn't get to the Triple Crown trail, and he shows up at this late stage of the season and wins a race like the Clark. And Baffert gets it done for his client, and these horses, they don't just disappear like some other notable horses that just have go up into the ether. They come back and they run and they perform and they go off to become stallions. You got to give him a lot of credit for that. The other thing that was brought out, Ronnie Goldfeder brought out the statistics. People were looking for Easter gifts. Jack Brown's numbers under those circumstances and these kinds of stakes on the main track are very weak. And so Easter Gift was a horse that was taking money who didn't deserve to take money, and sure enough, off the board. So, there's statistics and why, and there's reason that these statistics point to winners and point to horses to avoid. And, sometimes you got to take them for the face value. I thought Opportunity, ran a typically courageous race. The Baffert horses that's what he does. He gets them, if they're free runners, he gets them to break on top and keep going. And they, sometimes they get caught, like Painter and like Bodie Meister, but they put themselves in a position to win. And why people resent that about Baffert, I don't know.
Yeah, and again, I think these three-year-olds and the top three in here are included. The 3-year-olds' late season performances this year bode well for the handicap division, kind of reloading and getting off to a good start next year. But now let's take a look at some more 2-year-olds and how they'll translate to the 3-year-old season. We'll start talking about the couple of stakes at Churchill and then get to a nice allowance performance as well. But on the Philly side yesterday at Churchill Downs, the Goldenrod, won by the favorite, the 8-5 favorite, West Coast Belle. And I bring this one up in particular because it's Wayne Catalano and Gary and Mary West. And I pulled up the stats coming into the closing day at Churchill Downs.
Right.
Gary and Mary West are leading Ken and Sarah Ramsey.
Yeah, exactly. And Dale Romans and Catalano are in a pitched battle for the trainer title, and Ramsey and the West. I think Ramsey has got 6 runners entered today. So in typical empty the barn Gunnis fashion, Snurbick fashion, he's going to empty the barn. But whatever. This was a nice performance. The Phillies a little weaker than the boys that subsequently ran, and of course Dortmund, the horse that comes out of the weekend with as much attention focused on him as anybody. The big brown colt of Baffert with that mile win was, just stunningly impressive. 95 buyer in that performance.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I looked at the future wager when it first came out earlier this week, and I looked at Dortmund and said, hey, I haven't heard of this horse. And there he comes back on Saturday, yesterday, in between the 2-year-old stakes, and Dortmund gets it done as the 2-5 favorite pretty easily. And as you said, more impressive than maybe the stakes races. The male version of the stakes race yesterday, the Kentucky Jockey Club, was won by El Kabir, just holding off Imperia. And as you mentioned, Lord Nelson, who was favored in the race, winds up a disappointing 5th for Bob Baffert. But I thought both El Kabir and Imperia are ones probably to watch going forward.
Well, and Imperia ran very well in his first dirt effort, and Kieran McLaughlin, I'm sure they're very pleased with that try from Imperia. At the same time, for the Terra Novas, happened to have been with Tanya Terra Nova. She was sitting in the film room at Aqueduct, and I wished her luck before we headed out after the Cigar Mile, because she was waiting for the race to go off at Churchill. And of course, John Terra Nova had gone out to Louisville for the race. So El Kabir, 92 buyer, and very nice. And that was a smart move That was a very smart move. Although I suppose El Kabir could have been just as effective on the front end at Aqueduct on Saturday. But this was a clever maneuver to go out and pick this race off. And the only other performances, a couple other performances from Churchill you may have missed earlier in the day, that Taylor S. was a impressive allowance winner for Dale Roman, and you also had that nice emerging sprinter from West Point, Toasting Master, came back and won an allowance with an 82 buyer. But Taylor S., 92 buyer, John Nichols, the clocker from Churchill, was on with me Friday, and he had a lot of positive impressions to relay about Taylor S. It looks like she's got a lot of upside moving toward the 3-year-old season. We'll probably see her at Gulfstream in the typical 3-year-old stake run-ups.
And running a good second behind her, I'm a Looker, trained by Jenny Reese's husband. So they have a nice horse, too. Nice little 3-year-old. Yeah. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. And just before we let you go, we've got about a minute left, but I also wanted to touch on Hawthorne Gold Cup. Red Rifle gets it done for Todd Pletcher. And Penn National, the rescheduled Fabulous Strike. Ben's Cat wins for the 3rd year.
Ben's Cat's unbelievable. he's something else. It's amazing. It's amazing. And those rescheduled races, he had that Storm and Monarco win another one. He's in great form. for Dave Jacobson. I know that strapping groom fell after the wire in that sprint in the Fabulous Strike. And at first they was real concerned, but apparently he's okay. At least he was yesterday evening, banding back to New York, for those that were wondering about strapping groom. And you talk about that Hawthorne Gold Cup. As much good racing as there was around the country, that was a really fun race. And I was killing myself. And that Red Rifle happens to be a horse I like. He's out of a very familiar mare, Maine Knight, that was trained by Freddie Sykes. And I always loved Maine Knight. And this is a Giants Causeway gelding that, has been rock solid really all through his career. And this was a terrific effort on the front end. I was hoping he'd get corralled because I had some of the prices all lined up behind him. I played F&X for Jimmy Jerkins, of course, the Empire Classic winner. I liked that horse of Grant Forster's. There was a big price, over 20-1. Call Me George. I ran second, third, and fourth here. I was really annoyed because I happen to really like Red Rifle as a horse. I just expected that at 1.25 miles, he would get reeled in. But a very good ride. Laurent Giroux, what a great job! This French jockey's doing. This one is Caton Bradar's husband, Doug, is his agent, and Laurent Giroux's had an outstanding year as an emerging rider.
Yeah, he has kind of stepped up over the past 6 months or so and become a little bit notable. All right, Steve, got to wrap things up so we can move on to Jenny, but we appreciate the visit, the conversation on some of the stakes races. I'm sure you'll be going over all of these and getting the connections involved on the radio show this week, but we enjoyed the visit. We'll talk to you again next week, and hopefully you'll be here in the studio.
I think there's a chance I will be.
All right, we'll see you then.
Thanks.
Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races. We'll head into our next break, and when we come back, Jenny Reese from the Louisville Courier-Journal. We'll talk a little Churchill Downs as they wrap up their meet this weekend. Stay tuned.
I don't know. You hang around here. What do you think?
The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right. The 2014 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes, and a seat at the 2015 Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month's contest is the Capital Cup on December 6th. So sign up today, online at capitalotb.com, or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
I didn't want to get just any degree after high school.
Horse racing has always been my passion.
I was already a lawyer.
When I was young, my dad took me to the races. The sound of the crowd. I still remember.
I'm 40, and I don't want to stay in a career I don't love.
I want to follow my passion.
Follow your passion at the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to capitalotb.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. capitalotb.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. As promised before the break, always happy to be joined by Jenny Reese from the Louisville Courier-Journal. Good morning, Jenny.
Morning, sir.
And Jenny, it's the first time I've talked to you. I have to congratulate you. I had a big smile on my face when I read it a few weeks ago. You will be entering the National Museum. We know we'll see you in Saratoga this year because the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame, you have been selected to be put on the Joe Hirsch Media Roll of Honor, where the media folks get to be honored in the National Museum of Racing. And as I say, I had a big smile on my face, as I know a lot of folks did, because you do great work. What was your reaction when you heard that?
Well, completely shocked. But I will say this, I mean, it's a huge honor. I would never thought it would have happened. But we're not part of the induction ceremony. They're going to have a luncheon, I think it's going to be January in Lexington for it. So I'll have to hustle another way to get to Saratoga. But it's a huge honor to think that, the same conversation as Jim Murray, really. I mean, Jenny Reese, Jim Murray, you don't hear those two names in the same sentence.
Well, we all out here in the world reading think you do a great job, and certainly this, in this day and age, to be out there plugging away and at all the big events, we appreciate that. And while we're on this discussion, why don't we talk about a project you have going and alert people? You've started a new blog that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I did, about these two-year-old fillies that my husband has. It both won first time out. I've been thinking about it for some months because I've learned so much just watching the process of getting a horse ready to run, then the little setbacks you run into and things that happen. But I thought maybe I better make sure that, they actually race. And then they both won first out. And so I've done the first installment. I've got a second one probably to go up today because the one filly that broke her maiden, the first filly, and there's kind of an interesting angle to another very impressive winner yesterday, but I'm a whooper. She ran in what was a very tough 3/4 other than and ran into just a monster in Taylor S, trained by Dale Romans. And we were second. And not disappointed, but because you want to win, and I had people there that would have been great if they could have gotten in the winner's circle. But you have to be realistic. She ran a huge race. Robbie Alvarado was very excited after the race. So down the road, she's going to be a filly you're going to want to ride, that she's going to, looks like she'll go longer, and she relaxed off the pace. And it was probably one of the fastest run races of the day. So I'm calling it Dream On because that's what we're doing. But this is what just we found out the last couple of weeks is, Dortmund was the real hot horse that ran yesterday in a mile other than that Bob Baffert put on the plane with Opportunity coming to the Clark and his Lord Carson for the Kentucky Jockey Club. And Dortmund indeed was one of the most impressive winners yesterday. Dortmund and I'm a Looker are out of half sisters.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so I've been very excited about Dortmund, and especially the way he ran. Of course, it's completely blowing our price. Even before his race, he was 19-1 in the Derby Future wager, and after that race, I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the favorites when betting on that wager ends today.
Well, I will say my partner, Steve Bick, he's not in the studio today. We had him by phone earlier, but he said, unsolicited, he said Taylor S was one of the biggest performances down there yesterday. And I said, well, Jenny ran second to him. So he said, oh, very good. But you also scratched out Classy Corinthian. And again, that was another first-time out-of-the-box winner for you guys. Where's that one going to go next?
And other than at the fairgrounds, Pat absolutely didn't want to run them against each other. And I said to Pat, he says, I don't want to go in knowing that one's going to, is automatically going to be a loser. I said, but what if you finish second? You go think, maybe if I'd had her in there. And then he was telling me, he said, there looked like there was a lot of speed in there, and he thought it was a little quick to run her back. And I think he's thinking about just developing these horses. He just didn't think it was the right thing to do. And probably all she would have done is maybe she could have, for a little bit, entertained Taylor S on the lead. But you're right, if you're looking to develop a horse, that's maybe, then they spit it, you're not really helping them. But we, very happy with both horses. And but thank you for plugging that, because I do hope it's going to be a blog. We've had some other ones sort of on the same lines in the past to give people an idea of the things that go on behind the scenes. Like, just real quick about one segment. We're going to go between what's happening now and then what's, having, also reflecting back, playing catch up with stuff. But Classy Corinthian, the first time she was going to be in a timed work from the gate, she swept and the gate got stuck underneath it. Yeah, and I thought they were going to have to move the gate. And I don't know, I was asking, a friend of ours, an assistant starter on the gate that was actually in the stall with her, and the starter told me what a great job he did. That could have been the end of her racing career before it started, or even worse. She hit her head on the top of the gate. She has like a little scar there, but it's padded, thank God, or she'd have been dead. But just what the assistant starters do. But anyways, this guy said, he goes, well, she got herself out. He said, I've never seen such an athletic horse, because she was stuck underneath it. And, so those are the kinds of things that I think a lot of people don't realize, and just the danger that the assistant starters are in every day, and the great job they do. But it's kind of like referees. You never hear until one screws something up. Then you hear about them. But really the work and how important they are in the development of these young horses as well.
Yeah, and it should be a fun blog to follow. A couple of horses that look like they're going to have some talent against the Dream On blog, Louisville Courier Journal, of course, linked regularly on Equidaily as well. Jenny, let's take a look at some of the stakes action going back to Friday. I'd love your opinion on the Clark. It didn't look like, and I said this earlier on the show, necessarily the strongest edition of the Clark. Last year, of course, Eclipse implications, looked like a weaker bunch, but given that 3 3-year-olds ran 1, 2, 3, Opportunity, Protonico, and Constitution. We'll watch the stretch run here. It will be number 1 Opportunity over number 6 Protonico, who makes a nice late run. Number 7 Constitution runs 3rd. I think this race is into next year, as these horses start to validate themselves, may look like a stronger addition.
I think you're exactly right. I think you're right among the older horses. I mean, we didn't have a Came On Dude in there this year. But those 3-year-olds, you don't know how good they'll be. You know, Opportunity and Constitution, I always want to call Commissioner, who's a stablemate, but Constitution, you know, they would have been maybe second, third choice for the Kentucky Derby. And, you know, they didn't make the Derby, so let's go on and see what they do. And this could be one when you look back 10 years from now at the chart of the clock, you say that, man, that was really a tough race. I really wish that California Chrome had come. You know, partly for selfish reasons, but I think really that would be a grade 1 that had he won that and beat those other 3-year-olds, that you would have said, yeah, you know what, this horse is the 3-year-old champion and maybe even horse of the year. I'm still trying to decide what I make of his, you know, he's won 4 grade 1s, kudos to him, 2/3 of the Triple Crown ran well in the Belmont. But, you know, that wasn't the strongest grade 1 at Belmont. I want to say at Hollywood that he was in, but he did show some versatility, so that's sort of a subject for another day. But I agree with you with the Clark. Really interesting how it, and you know what, you could have boxed those 3 horses in the trifecta. It was actually a pretty good try. If you just thought, you know, the 3-year-olds are the best horses. And Protonic, I think the horse used to go on and be a real nice horse. And Constitution was a little keen, and I think he wouldn't surprise you at all if he had a big 4-year-old year.
Yeah, I think when we get to the first of the year and beyond, I think this older division, which kind of fell apart in the summer, is reloaded with these 3-year-olds. But let's go to the 2-year-olds and how they may transfer to 3-year-olds. And I talked a little bit about this earlier. We'll watch the stretch run of the Goldenrod, and it will be number 8 West Coast Bell getting it done as the 8-5 favorite. And I wanted to touch on this race because, as I said when I talked about it earlier, Wayne Catalano, Gary and Mary West, right in the thick of things coming to the last day. And the last day is going to be interesting on the trainer's title, Wayne Catalano and Dale Romans, but the owner's title with Gary and Mary West ahead of Ken and Sarah Ramsey.
Yeah, you don't see that much, and I don't know how many the Ramseys has in, but Wayne has 3 in today, including in the last, or either the 11th or the last race. There's 12. Dale has 3 or 4 in, but his are all, he'll be done before Wayne runs his last. So, you know, it's kind of funny because Wayne tied, I want to say it was Asmussen for the September title, but kind of the same way. It really came down to the last race, and I remember Wayne, one thing, you know, he was happy to tie for the title, but he really wanted to get the owner's title for the West. And so we'll see if he gets that done for them. And then so this morning talking to Catalano, he's like, how many Dale have in? And this and that. And so we're talking, I said, now, Wayne, if you win the title and I come interviewing afterwards and you say, oh, I really wasn't even paying any attention to that, you know, that is, I was, I don't like hear this conversation. But yes, he's very much paying attention to what the score is.
And we only got about a minute left, Jenny, but I did also want to look at the Jockey Club, Kentucky Jockey Club, because this always has implications for the 3-year-old season as well. It will be El Kabir winning. And this is a horse that has shown a little potential already, ran second prior to this in the Nashua behind Blofeld up in New York. El Kabir, the number 5 horse, will win over number 8 Imperia, and that's a nice horse from McLaughlin and Godolphin. And so thoughts on El Kabir and Imperia, but also tie that into the race just prior to this. Probably the best 2-year-old yesterday was the aforementioned Dortmund.
Yes, and he was using it as a prep for the Cash Call Futurity.
Oh, okay.
And they said those races you just don't get allowance race to go out in California, and the other horses were coming this way. But Bob Baffert thinks a lot of this horse. I remember the day after the Breeders' Cup, that morning he was telling me about him, same owner as Bayerns, and he's also named for another German soccer team. And I think he just wants to, kind of take his time, the allowance step in developing what he thinks is a very nice horse. And, yeah, he was probably the most impressive. Of course, I'm a little biased these days now that I found out he's cousins with I'm a Looker. But the other horse in there I think we need to pay attention for down the road, and the first two are very nice horses. I really liked Imperial going in that race. I was surprised he was bet as heavily, but there are a lot of McLaughlins in Louisville, Kentucky. But maybe showed him some love at the windows. And the first two all ran very well, but so did Eagle, the third-place horse who had nowhere to go through the stretch for Neil Howard and Will Farish and Brian Hernandez. And I think that's a horse that you're really going to, need to pay attention to down on the, the stretch and on the road to the Kentucky Derby.
All right, Jenny, got to wrap things up, but always appreciate the conversation and getting some thoughts on the Churchill meet that's wrapping up today, again, with some human intrigue as well as equine intrigue on closing day. And again, Jenny, congratulations on being named to the Joe Hirsch Media Roll of Honor at the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame. As they say, we were all kind of pleased with that. So again, congratulations.
Thank you. Huge honor.
All right. Jenny Reese from the Louisville Courier-Journal. Going to wrap things up for Loose on the Lead for this Sunday morning. We're in here every Sunday from 10 until 11 a.m. I'm in the studio this week. Steve Bick was via phone. Hopefully we'll get him in here live next week. Don't forget, questions, comments, or suggestions. We would love to hear from you. Loose on the Lead at yahoo.com. You can also visit our Facebook page. But by all means, give us a shout with a question, comment, or suggestion. Going to wrap things up again, as noted, for this week's edition. Join us next week at 10 o'clock for more Loose on the Lead. Enjoy the races this afternoon. Let's all cash a few tickets. And as far as me, I'll be back in here tomorrow morning for Racing Across America. See you then.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.